Okay, thank you for coming. This session is wonderfully attended. I like to see that. I'm Rachel Lawson. I'm the Drupal Association's new community liaison. So I've been trying to get to speak to as many people here this week as possible. I've not managed to speak even to half my friends here, actually. Although I've been in the community for 10 years, this is actually my first DrupalCon North America. Anybody else first DrupalCon North America? Oh wow. Cool, that's fantastic. Okay, so this is the Ask Dries session. We're going to do this differently this year. Historically, we've had a very scrambled 5 minutes at the end of the Driesnote, and people
My fault.
No.
Historically, my fault. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I go too long.
Yeah, you do overrun. So what we wanted to do was something that actually we used to do, apparently, even before I was in the Drupal community, and that is have a separate session for Ask Dries. And hopefully this works.
Yeah.
I've got my Twitter. You've got your Twitter. Make sure those Ask Dries questions are there. Now I'm going to try and get round and actually get people to ask the question themselves and pass you the microphone. And it needs to be quite close for them to be able to hear it and for us to record the session so that people know what question you have asked. So give us a moment to get to you. Okay, I was actually going to start with a question that I asked in Vienna last year myself. And that was, I was wearing the T-shirt. I was wearing a DrupalCon London T-shirt, which meant so much to me because it was my first DrupalCon Europe event and close to where I lived in London. Now, I asked then, what was your favourite T-shirt and what memories does it bring back, Dries?
I remember that question. So I have a lot of T-shirts with Drupal stuff on them, like literally boxes and boxes and boxes. Half of the little storage area and half of it is filled with Drupal T-shirts because, I don't know, I get emotionally attached to them. And so I try to keep them. But I guess my favorite one is my very first Drupal T-shirt. And that was from 2004. And so I started Drupal 2001. And for the first 3 years, I would just work on Drupal on my own. I didn't really talk to people about Drupal other than in an email mailing list, but never really met people in person. And so in 2004, I was invited. So I was doing a PhD at the time. And so one of my papers that I authored together with some colleagues was accepted at a conference. The conference was UPSLA. It's a famous computer science conference. It's where they first introduced object-oriented programming and sort of key programming language concepts were introduced at UPSLA. And so we had to travel there. It was in Vancouver, Canada. And I don't know how it happened, but somehow a few people in Vancouver that knew we were coming decided to put together the first Drupal meetup, the first Drupal meetup ever.
So cool.
Yeah, it was pretty special. And so they made a T-shirt, and a bunch of people traveled from around the US actually to Vancouver. Like Neil Drum was there, Kieran Lal, Boris Mann, like a whole bunch of people that we all got together and we were just coding in a hotel room, I remember. And it was a lot of fun, and so we had our first ever Drupal T-shirts, and I was like, wow, we knew. And so I still have those T-shirts.
Does it still fit?
No. And I also have been to every DrupalCon in the history of DrupalCons, and so I have every DrupalCon T-shirt too, which I'm putting, every time I come home, I put it aside, sort of in like a special box. And maybe one day I'll hang them on the walls or something.
Yeah,
I think it's about 32 or 33 T-shirts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just DrupalCons.
So when we went off mic in Vienna, you mentioned something that you'd received recently from that UXLA conference. What was that?
Yeah, it's, so I got so that paper that we presented 10 years later, won the most influential paper awards of that year, and so it was cited, I think, 160 times in other academic publications. So we got a ginormous trophy, and so that's a good memory. It was a successful trip. Because it was a successful trip because on that trip we said, wow, this was a lot of fun. We should really do another meetup. And that's when I decided to organize DrupalCon, Antwerp or Belgium. And that was really the first DrupalCon, was a direct result from that meeting. Because we had a lot of fun and we said, let's all get together again. So that's why it's a successful trip.
That sounds fantastic.
Oh.
It sounds good memories.
Yes.
So I'm going to try and move on to everybody else now I've had my say. I'm going to be asking people probably by their Twitter ID to see if they're in the room. And I'm going to start with Avi Schwab. Is he here? Oh, cool. Couldn't see you there. So if I head your way, you'll be able to ask your question. I was going to say it's there.
Oh, cool. Hey, Dries. Thanks for this opportunity. It's a great space to have everybody here. So I've basically spent all week talking to WordPress people about their amazing community organization. And so one of the things I learned today is that WordPress, specifically Automatic, has 8, soon to be 10 full-time employees.
So 8 to 10?
Yeah,
No?
that specifically support their community events. And so, and that's like including 2 or 3 developers.
Yep.
So I was wondering how Drupal can work together to coordinate and work to build up our community events, given the limited funding that the Drupal Association has, or where should we go in trying to support our smaller local community events?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I actually think it's a great idea what they do, right? Because these first DrupalCons actually organized them or helped organize them. It's a lot of work, and it's always a lot more work than you expect it to be. So I think having some sort of central service, for lack of a better term, that helps local camp organizers, I think it's a fantastic idea, because we could do a lot of different things. We could have a camp website out of the box, so they don't have to build their websites from scratch, right? We can have all sorts of best practices out of the box. And I could also provide consistency across the camps, as well as sort of minimum bar of quality, let's say, because there are stories about some camps not being that great, and it literally turns people away from Drupal. Right, and so there's an opportunity to make camps more scalable, easier, and better quality, because we can all work together on raising the bar. Obviously, we don't have the budget to hire 8 people or 10 people to do that. So, but I think it would be a good idea to make a start and to grow that kind of concept over time. And I'm not sure, but I think what WordPress does is they also take sort of, either the entire profits or a share of the profits from these events. And so there's probably a way to make it sustainable, like where the Drupal Association offers a service, right? And so then the local organizers pay for that service. It could be, I don't know how that would work, but if you do it that way, I think maybe we can grow it over time. And I think that would be really good for Drupal. The other thing that the Drupal Association could help with is sell sponsorships, right? And because there's companies that probably would pay a one-time fee to one organization and then have their logos in all of the camps. And so that way the camps also don't have to do all of the fundraising work. Maybe they specialize in raising money from their local ecosystem, but the Drupal Association can offer these services, provide some money, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a very interesting model.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big problems, if I can just add one more It almost seems like we're in a chicken and egg situation now with trying to get there. WordPress has spent a lot of money and they're losing, their automatic, the commercial arm of WordPress is spending a lot of money into facilitating this organization. And as you said, we don't have anybody who's contributing that. And in order to get this financial organization, it really takes dedicated resources, significant resources to be able to deal with that. And the DA does a lot, and they do what they can, but I think there's still a lot of resistance from some local organizations because we're not sure, proving the value of getting together is something that we haven't done.
Yeah, it's really important. Now, what you probably don't know is that we had our 2-day board meeting. So every DrupalCon, the Drupal Association board gets together. And so actually discuss this. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I heard little pieces.
A little bit, yeah, okay. And so we agreed that we would investigate what we can do. And so there's a committee that's going to basically see if we can put together a proposal to start something like this. But it won't be 8 or 10 employees. Like, we'll start small and we'll grow into something bigger. So there's definitely a keen interest in making this happen. So we'll see where we get. I'm excited to see the proposal, hopefully in a few months' time, or I don't know, when the proposal will come back.
Cool. Yeah, so we've had a lot of camp organizers talking about this, and we're happy to help.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Dries, I just want to follow up as an organizer. Yep. Maybe you can bring all of us organizers together and we can help you with a solution.
Yeah. I like that.
We've been doing these camps for a long time, so maybe you guys should just come and ask us, and we'll let you know.
It's a great idea. Actually, I was talking to Gabor about Drupal Europe. One of the things they're trying to do is bring, I don't know if I'm misrepresenting it or not, but we're figuring out where the next Drupal Europe will be, or the next DrupalCon Europe will be. We're trying to bring these organizers into Drupal Europe organization, so they can shadow, the Drupal Europe organizers to get ready for next year. So not only could we bring them together in one location and sort of share best practices, we can also help sort of mentor new organizers. Because I talked to a lot of people that have been organizing Drupal camps and they've been doing it for 8 years or 7 years, and they get tired and they want to pass it on to other people to organize, right? So how do we keep doing that, because these events are so important for Drupal. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have, moving on to more technology matters?
Sure. Yeah.
Kevin Raynon. Hey.
So I've gotten answers to a lot of my questions, but let's just say that someone's responsible for 1,000 Drupal sites in Drupal 7 currently.
Like you?
Maybe. And we know the end of life date for Symfony 3 and the end of security support for that, which will end up flagging any Drupal 8 site for security violations in our environment. And it's very difficult for us to jump through the hoops necessary to keep running that software. When are we going to know more specifically when the end of life of Drupal 7 will be, and 8?
Right. That's a great question. I don't have a concrete answer on what that date will be, but we are discussing this, and I think there is value in making sure we have a good answer so people can plan accordingly, especially if you have 1,000 sites. You need a lot of advance warning, let's say, or a long heads up to make sure you can prepare appropriately. So there is an issue right now that involves a number of people, including some of the core committers, where this is being discussed, and it's kind of like a difficult issue because there's all these dependencies. We're still trying to finish initiatives. We're dependent on Symfony, as you said, and they have their own release cycle and their own end of lives. And so we need to look at all these different dimensions to try and arrive to some sort of reasonable date that we can stick to. Plus, we're also evaluating some potential tweaks to our own release schedule. So these need to be incorporated as well. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but we are. I know you wish I could do that too. That's fair. But yeah, we're working through it. And right now, there's sort of different proposals in that issue. I'm not sure if you've seen that issue. Maybe you have. But there's different proposals in that issue. And I think the one that has the most momentum as it stands right now would be that the earliest date for Drupal 9 would be early 2020, I believe it was.
With a 6-month window.
Yes. Yeah.
So my issue is really like you're not leaving us a lot of time to figure out how to move forward. And because a lot of my core problems with D8 have been addressed, we can still move forward towards D8. But 2 years with the size of our infrastructure is not a whole lot of time. And so we have to start evaluating alternatives and coming up with plan Bs. And for me, that's difficult because I've been involved in Drupal for so long, and you're kind of forcing my hand here because it's my job on the line. If our servers are flagged with security vulnerabilities, I have the option of continuing to run D7, which is what everyone's telling me. Like, don't worry, individual vendors are going to come up with long-term support plans. That's not going to stop it from being flagged by Qualsys or Arachni or any of the services our security teams use. And I have to sign a piece of paper that say, I personally take responsibility for the security of this server, which puts me in a really bad place.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're on 7, you said, right? Yeah. So one option is to migrate to 8. Well, I don't know. Like, apparently that's a funny topic. I must have missed something maybe, but I mean, one option is to get to 8, and then you should be supported for a long time. I mean, maybe there's a reason you can't go to 8 or don't want to. But yeah, we'll discuss this more with the core committers, and hopefully we have an answer. Soonish.
But at least it's raised, and that's a big deal. That helps.
Yeah, no,
people's attention.
I completely understand the concern.
Okay, we'll move on to another. Actually, I might be able to handle this one myself. Mike Bainton. Do you want to use the microphone there?
Hello. So my question is essentially, it's around the messaging on the new D.O homepage particularly, but also the overall messaging that we're sending out right now about what Drupal 8 is and who its target audience is. The new homepage says that right at the top, it's for ambitious digital experiences, and it promotes Drupal for developers, for marketing teams, and for agencies. But given all of the recent initiatives, especially that are around making Drupal easy, could we also just add in a little bit of messaging for classic Drupal site builders?
What do you mean with a classic Drupal site builders?
I mean people that are, one-person, two-person shops that aren't developers. Speaking with those people this week, the feedback that I've been hearing is actually like Drupal 8 totally works for them. In fact, they like it better than Drupal 7, but it's only if they stumbled onto that by accident, right? If they look at the messaging, they think that you would think that Drupal 8 is for the enterprise. And I feel like we're losing a large group of people that actually the software would work really well for, only because of messaging.
Yeah. Actually, well, I think you're right. Like, if you look at the roadmap, a lot of the things we're doing helps everybody, not just enterprise and non-enterprise. For me, and I've said this in the past, to me, ambitious digital doesn't mean enterprise, right? And I know it's misunderstood. But I specifically chose not to use enterprise as a term because I don't agree with that, right? And so for me, ambitious means could be a small startup, 5-person startup that's trying to do something unique, something differentiated, and they need a platform. And Drupal should be a great fit for them. But that's differentiated from more sort of cookie-cutter, solutions, right? I don't think we're going to beat, like a Wix or a Squarespace.
So can I ask, because I thought that was very interesting, you had Squarespace as a competitor that you mentioned at the keynote.
Yeah, I know. Probably sending mixed messages there. That's a good, fair point. But I wasn't trying to say we need to be like Squarespace. The point that I was trying to make in my keynote is we need to look at our competitors broadly and look at what they're really good at. And for example, I think Squarespace is really good at page building, right? And so I think we can look at Squarespace for inspiration on how to make page building better. Because what they're doing, I think, is compelling on the low end, but also in the enterprise. Now, doesn't mean we have to copy Squarespace. Like, we can do page building in a way that plays to our strengths, like structured content and these kinds of things. But from an experience point of view, I do think we can learn from those systems. So, but point well taken about not sending mixed messages there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And somebody else, I saw some people on Twitter saying, like, why do you compare Drupal with WordPress for the evaluator experience? Like, somebody's pointed that out too, and I'll be more careful, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, before you go, actually, can I ask a question with my DA hat on of you? Sorry, go ahead. We spent some time building some personas and working out our little beans and so on, and the words for marketeers, evaluators, and developers, thinking that developers would be the people who would go there to get the code, because that's what they're interested in, which is essentially what you're saying, exactly what you would expect a site builder to do. Would there be better words that we could use in that jelly bean so that the one-person, two-person shops that you're talking about, people would know where to go?
I'm sure there are. I just don't know them at the moment.
Okay.
But so you're saying the developer one is the one that you intend to target the people that I'm talking about, right? Because to me, it very much does not right now. I see developers and I go, Drupal's for developers, right? And that's maybe not what, so.
Remember, we were building something for people who don't know Drupal. These are coming to Drupal for the first time, and they're looking for the thing. So would a site builder, who we call a site builder, is a quite unique word to a degree within our community.
Absolutely.
Really,
that's why I did not say site builder right now. I'm sure there's a way to express what you want, but
yeah. I just wanted to check because it's interesting to hear what you're saying, and I want to take that back into the Drupal Association and see if there's anything that we can do with that, because that's really good feedback.
We can probably talk about that.
Yeah, I'd love
offline.
to. Yeah, thank you. Guess what? My phone's just locked itself. Actually, is Tim Hennon here? He's asked a question. Okay, I'll ask it on his behalf.
Sure.
What is the most important thing that an individual consumer, not a content creator, can do to preserve the open web?
Huh. Interesting question. So consumer being like a visitor, I guess?
Yeah, a user of a website as opposed to...
I mean, I think probably like not use Facebook or something. Which is what I'm trying to do, by the way. I don't know if you follow that, but I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with Facebook, and one of them is that they're an aggregator, right? And so people read the web through Facebook. Same thing with Google. And there's actually research done, and for a lot of people that aren't as technology savvy as many or almost all of them in the room here, they found that for those people, Facebook was the web. Like, if you asked them what is the web, they said Facebook. And so I think it just goes to show that there's a problem, right? Because what Facebook does is it aggregates all of this content and it decides what people get to read. And in the process, they're actually putting, to answer your question, I think they're causing real stress on the open web or independent websites, right? So I would say go visit these websites versus reading that through Facebook and read it without an ad blocker, really. Like, we need to support those people, those organizations that have websites. And so, yeah, uninstall Facebook.
And uninstall your ad blocker. That actually is a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important.
I think it is important because, people are trying to build businesses and websites that provide value and great content. And if you don't support them somehow, then you hurt them, right? So, and a lot of them have to go to Facebook because that's where the reach is too. And so it's like this interesting situation where they have to rely on Facebook to get visitors, and if they don't use Facebook, they get basically punished. And then if people don't use Facebook and they use ad blockers, they're kind of making it worse. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I just say I left Facebook 2 years ago?
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, moving on. Whoa. Okay, do we have Alana Burke here? Ah. Now, Alana's got a whole string here, which I'm hoping that she'll be able to shorten slightly. Otherwise, you could be here for the rest of the week.
Where did you want me to
Try to put things together and ask something between them. Can I squeeze?
Okay, so I know we've heard a lot from you about being passionate about, diversity and inclusion efforts, and I certainly believe you, but I think that we don't see a lot of that come through, in your blog or on Twitter or really, throughout the year. We hear a little bit about it at the keynote here and there, but, I think we'd really like to hear more about that. And I think if you could do things like, put more out there when you're personally tweeting or blogging or just retweeting things about diversity and inclusion or from the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, or just making strong statements about what you do and don't believe in, I think that would really go a long way towards telling the community what, and this also goes along with making the values and principles statement. I think hearing it from you and not just from, the diversity and inclusion group or from other people in the community, I think it would really go a long way towards, making that, I think, more clear as to what, is and isn't accepted in the community and what you do and don't support, because so many people listen to you as the leader of our community. So I guess part of, not just a suggestion, but part of my question is, why don't you engage more in diversity and inclusion things online when, I know that they're happening, so...
Yep. Sorry, were you done asking the question or not?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off if you weren't. No, well, thanks for that feedback. First of all, it's very important to me, this topic. Diversity is very, very important. And we have to do better too, frankly, as a community, right? I don't think we are where we want to be with these things. And so I'm happy to show more leadership there. So, I don't know what else to say immediately. Maybe I haven't done enough talking about it. Maybe I haven't done enough tweeting about it. But I can certainly do more, and I certainly want to lead by example. So I'm going to take you up on that, and I'll do more. You have my promise.
And I guess the other half of my question is, is there anything that we specifically as the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group can do to make that easier for you? If we can open a line of communication or anything, let us know what we can do to communicate to you, or let you know what would be helpful. Just let us know. We're here.
Yeah. Let me think about that. I'd love help for sure. I will admit that while I think this is very important to do, I'm also not, the expert on this topic, right? So I'm learning as well about how to best communicate about these things. And I want to set a great example because I'm passionate about it. As long as we can work on these things together, I'm very happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, we are here.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I will say I have made mistakes in the past. I remember I think in one of my keynotes in 2009, I think it was in Copenhagen, I made a comment in my keynote which was sexist. And yeah, I wasn't thoughtful about it. I forgot all the details, but the community's reaction was fairly aggressive, let's say. And that actually did shut me down for a while. And so I think what's important is to call people out, but to do so in a way that also allows people to learn from their mistakes without being hurt in the process. Does that make sense? So it's an interesting balance, I would say, between educating people that make mistakes without without alienating them. So, and I mean, this is a long time ago. Like, I'm not trying to use that as an excuse or anything, but I think it's important for us as a community to understand that people will make mistakes, and then when they do, to provide sort of an environment where they can, get better without sort of being, I don't know the right word, but like. Sometimes it's tough to make mistakes, and so people need to feel like when they do make a mistake, they can recover from that. So I'm struggling to find the right words here, but hopefully the intent comes across.
Thanks, Dries. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I've been passed a question by someone to ask on their behalf. With content and relational management being one of the top reasons people choose Drupal, if we focus too much on catching up or passing other projects in other feature areas, do we risk losing our best advantage?
So when you say relational management, is that like...
I think we're talking about the fact that we can structure data very well, or structure content. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think to win as a project, you need to have clear differentiators, right? So, and the node system and views and, that's always been a key differentiator for us and a reason why Drupal was successful, and we need to keep that. We need to double down on those things. The things that make us good, we should double down on. And I feel like we've been doing that actually with Drupal 8. The entity system and moving views to core and all of these things. At the same time, we also need to make sure that table stakes features are there. And sorry, for better or worse, we do have some missing table stake features, and so a lot of what we're doing there is catching up. And I think it's really important. And a good analogy is actually going to a restaurant. When people go to a restaurant, they expect clean tables, right? And if you don't have clean tables, people aren't going to come back. But nobody goes to a restaurant because there are clean tables. And that's a little bit the analogy here. Like, we need to have good media management. We need to have good layout building and all of these things, because that's the equivalent of having clean tables. Because that's expected today. And so we need to absolutely focus on that, because if you don't have the clean tables, nothing else matters. And so we're working hard on filling those gaps. And then on top of that, you do need to have something differentiated. Like, people go to a restaurant because there's a great chef that makes really good foods or something, right? And so we also need to work on those things. And I think API First is a great example of that, and the stuff we're doing there. I think that's stuff that gives us differentiation. And I think the whole entity system and our structured data approach is still something that is relatively unmatched, to be honest, by other content management systems. But it kind of goes to waste a little bit because we don't have the ease of use that people have come to expect. So yeah, we should definitely do all these things. And I know it's easy to say and a lot of work to do all of these things, but we kind of have to.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
One day I'll take you to my favourite Indian restaurant in Bradford in the UK. Chipped melamine tables, broken chairs. It's amazing. Cheap too. Do we have Matt's AB in the audience? Oh, pity, because I like his question. And I wish Tim Lenihan was here again.
Oh.
Or maybe some of the other Drupal Association engineering team? When will Drupal when will Drupal move over to GitHub so we can use pull requests? I think it will make contributing easier.
Yeah, that's an easy question. Neil is going to answer. I was
so hoping Neil would come up.
I can try to answer it, but you go first, Neil.
GitLab is the one that's currently looking like the front runner. We did a session on it yesterday, I think, or maybe a couple days ago. So there's a whole recording of that, and that has all the details. But yeah, it's kind of, we have a proof of concept of the first phase of that, and now we have the other 20% of the project, like all of the details, like making sure all of the usernames fit into GitLab's username restrictions that are different than the ones we have. So making sure everyone can still access their account and everything works. So yeah, we're an agile team, so when it's ready, hopefully before before Drupal Europe.
So by the way, remember the Neil that I talked about in the opening? That's that Neil. Yeah. That's
I always used to think I was a Drupal developer, and then I sat down with Neil and I thought, oh, I'm really not.
So, but I can add a little bit more color because, we've looked at all these systems because, we want to modernize some of our development tools, but actually what we've learned is that we've actually have some of the best tools. And you may not believe it, but as we started looking at all these other solutions, we found out, like, wow, they don't have anything close to what we have. Sure, we don't have pull requests, and they have pull requests, but we have all these other things which nobody else has ever had to build because they don't have a collaborative open source project as large as Drupal, right? And so when we started talking to GitLab, as an example, they said, wow, I can't believe you guys have all this. And we want to implement some of this because this is really state of the art. And you may not believe me when I say these things, but it's sort of true. And so, and so we've been working since with those organizations, including GitHub and GitLab, to see if they're actually willing to advance their software to meet our needs. And they've been sufficiently inspired by how we do things that they've been, slowly but certainly they've been doing this. So hopefully at some point we can switch to those tools like GitLabs. And that would make a lot of sense for us because we would get out of the business of building our own. And we could, reapply the people that are working on these tools to work on more strategic things, maybe like the stuff we talked about, like how can we help camps with a website, these kinds of things. So that's been an active project. And it's been a little bit slow because we're actually dependent on these organizations advancing their software. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the next question is going to be Christoph Bradett. And I'm going to tell him which one to ask, because I don't think it's fair to ask, what's your favourite website?
Mike.
Yeah, my question is an open question. It's my first DrupalCon in US, and I've met a lot of very inspiring people, very, very good conversations. And I was wondering, so what was your favorite moment? What was your favorite moment, maybe that just...
Of this conference?
Yeah, of this conference, if you had one of those, of which I've had a couple.
Yeah, well, let's see. I had a bunch of interesting favorite moments in a way. Like, I had several people come up to me and said, you know what, my significant other has type 1 diabetes. And I was really inspired by that video. It was very small interactions with these people, but that was actually touching to me. Like, these people were really inspired by some of that in the keynote. Sort of at a higher level, I feel I feel a lot of validation, and maybe people give me filtered feedback, I don't know, but I feel a lot of validation about the things we're currently working on. A lot of people have come up to me and said, yeah, we're working on the right things, you know, from the page builder to media management to the JavaScript modernization to the new initiative that I announced around Composer as an example, or config management, to focusing on the evaluator experience and the documentation, to marketing. I had a lot of validation, which is great, because it gives at least me more confidence, and I'm sure many other people more confidence to really double down and try and go faster in a way, because I don't know. That, to me, that's one of my bigger takeaways. Maybe not my favorite moment, but that was great to hear and feel from people. So I don't know if it resonates with others here, but I had a lot of conversations. I've been doing these roundtables that Rachel is helping to facilitate. So we had a roundtable with Drupal users. We had a roundtable with Drupal agency owners, Drupal shop owners. We had a roundtable with community members interested in governance, as an example. But the first two groups was a lot about features, functionality. Like, we asked them, what do you need to see Drupal accelerate or to make your business more successful? And the things that they asked for were the things that we had talked about in the keynote. So that was great to hear.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
I've got another question from the floor. And much as I hearing my sound of my own voice near this speaker, is Drupal 7 dead? Releases have significantly slowed down in the last year, but Drupal 7,
right.
Drupal 9's on the thing, but Drupal 8 you were showing was moving.
Yeah, Drupal 7 isn't dead. I mean, most of the Drupal sites are running on Drupal 7, but I think a lot of the innovation has shifted to Drupal 8. Which is an important difference. I mean, Drupal 7 is mature, stable, reliable, and people are using it. People are still launching new websites on Drupal 7 too, and that's totally fine, right? That's why we provide support for Drupal 7. So yeah, it's not dead, but I would, and I don't have the good data here, but I would imagine most of the activity in the issue queues and Git is all around Drupal 8 right now versus Drupal 7.
Aha, that's true. Yeah. I know, it's all I've ever worked on. Okay, is Joe Schindler here? Joe Schindler? No? Oh, okay. So Joe asked, the new values and principles need some additional work to more accurately reflect the community's concerns, etc., and grow them. How do you plan to address this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, let's see. Where do I start? Maybe I'll talk a little bit about the process and then the path forward. Yeah. And I can go way back, but let's say, start about recent events. So we got together with a group in December that included core committer and somebody from the community working group, Megan from the DA and some others. And we looked at some of the community feedback. And out of that came, like a recommendation or a decision for me to try and capture the values and the principles of the project. And so that was in December 2017. And so since then, I've been working on trying to capture some of these things. And as I mentioned in my keynote, that was really hard work because it's kind of difficult to take all of the learnings and all of the best practices that we have developed over all the years and to summarize them in a set of values and principles. And so I did a lot of writing, rewriting. At some point, I think I had 24 principles, threw away half of them. I ran things by other people along the way as well. And so I got some feedback along the way. And ended up with 5 values and 11 principles. And I wasn't necessarily finished with them because I knew I wanted to open it up to the community and make it collaborative, but I wanted to put a first stake in the ground. But I arrived at a point where I felt, good enough about them. Like for me, they captured some of my fundamental truths around Drupal, things that I've learned over 17 years and things that I've seen work for 17 years in terms of how we work together, how we make decisions, these kinds of things. And so I wanted to talk about it in my keynote, and that's why I decided to publish them just before the keynote, with the goal to move forward with a collaborative process, right? And so I know they're not perfect, and I think there was some feedback on Principle 8, which is the one around diversity, and it's a very difficult principle to get right. And as I said, I'm not necessarily the expert on this principle, and so I do need help, and we need to work on something that we can all stand behind too, right? And so it was the right point to open it up, to discuss it, and to move them forward. So the way I think about this document is that the release of this alpha version is a milestone, but that we'll be working on this document for many, many years to come. Like it will be a living document that we update, that we strengthen, that we make more robust. I'm sure there's things that we've missed or that I've missed that needs to be added. I'm not native English either, so I'm sure a lot of the words that I chose may not accurately reflect or might be interpreted differently in English, or might be difficult to translate in other languages. So there's a lot of tweaking and evolving we can do. And so we actually met about it earlier today as well, and we discussed like what's the best next step to move this document forward. And I shared that I don't want to be the single owner of this document. Like I just wanted to get it started, to plant the seed, if you will. And so as a next step, we're going to try and put together a working group, if you will, a committee of people that represent, let's call it a diverse committee of people that with different interests, so to speak, that can actually take it from here and carry it forward. And so my next step is to put together a charter for this group, just like we have charters for the other groups. And so once the charter is in place, and you'll all be able to give feedback on the charter, then we'll have to appoint some people to the group. And then hopefully we can start incorporating a lot of the feedback and make the principles more robust. And so what we announced was sort of a starting point and hopefully a foundation for more work to be done on top of. So I'm personally excited about it. I think it's going to help a lot of people in the community. And I hope we can also start to really live this document. Right? There's no point having them sit somewhere on the website when we don't actually can use them in practice. But so far, I'm actually, despite some of the mixed feedback on some of the principles, I've been really encouraged by some of the other feedback. Somebody came to me actually yesterday and they said, sometimes I've been too harsh on Twitter. And, one of the principles is, seek to understand first. And that person had learned over time that maybe you shouldn't kind of jump on another person when you disagree. And so the person told me that personal learning was reflected in that principle, and that having a principle could maybe have accelerated that learning. Right? So it's a great little anecdote that the principles could be very useful.
Absolutely, so, yeah. I'm really looking forward to getting involved in helping get that message out and communicating what we're going to be doing with that. I did learn today as well that apparently there is no word for governance in Icelandic. Tell me if I'm right. I'm sure that's what you said. Which is ironic, because isn't it the place with the oldest government in the world or something?
Yeah, we have these different words.
Yeah, well, you have different words. Yeah, that's true. Oh no, what have I done to my phone now? Okay, is Tony Legrone in the audience? Hey. Oh, do you want to use the mic? Do you want to use the mic?
I like your shirt. I've almost the same shirt.
Thank you. I was wondering, because I started with Drupal right as Drupal 7 was getting launched. And I was wondering if you created it from the beginning as a modular system and community oriented, or did you get into that over time out of necessity maybe?
No, it's pretty much from the beginning. Yeah, so how do I tell this story? So when I started working on Drupal, there wasn't a whole lot of content management systems out there that were open source. There was things like PHP Nuke and that kind of stuff. And frankly, they were kind of like a shit show. They weren't great in terms of, they had a lot of adoption, a lot of users, but I was a computer science student, right? And so, I had learned in school what good architecture is. And I was also involved with Linux. I was a contributor to the Linux project. And Linux used a modular architecture. And so when I started Drupal, I was like, yeah, of course we need to make this modular just like Linux. Because I was using Linux at the time too. And so to me, it was kind of like a no-brainer, I guess. And I felt like there was an opportunity to build something that was better architected than some of the leading competitors at the time.
Did you start out working with other people, or did you do it alone at the beginning?
It was just me, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I started on my own. I think most people probably know the story, but I originally was planning to spend a couple nights building a message board for my dorm. And PHP and MySQL were just released, or were relatively new technologies. Before that, I was working with Perl and writing stuff to files, and Tickle CK, I think it was, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow, a database and PHP, and let me just mess around with that for a couple days. And that turned into 17 plus years. And so, yeah, I started it on my own, scratching my own itch, and here we are.
I thought I was bad for getting distracted. My goodness.
It's funny because I never expected this, right? I never had, or at least in the first years, there was no master plan. I just was doing what I was doing, having fun, and in many ways, I feel like an accidental leader too for this project. I didn't wake up one day and I'm going to build this CMS, and hundreds of thousands of people are going to use it. So, kind of happens. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks. Another one from the floor. Why do you think many Drupal sites are hesitant to update their site? How can we make it easier for them?
Update their sites in upgrade?
It doesn't say whether it's a major or a minor upgrade, actually. Let's assume minor.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. The reason is because we do add new features to minors, which is a great thing to do. It does introduce some complexity sometimes, or sometimes these new features compete with contributed modules, and there's not always an upgrade path historically. So, that's been a challenge. Not every organization has the resources to do that, right? And so we've been trying to evolve our release process and become more careful about breaking these kinds of things and providing upgrade paths from contributed modules to core. So we've learned a lot, and we're making it better and better. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why there is some resistance now. I think we'll keep getting better at that.
Good, thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to catch you up. I was hoping you'd talk longer. Okay, I did have another one. I've lost it. I've got so many questions that are mixed in with people's comments now that I can't read the questions. Okay, so there is one here. I need to read it all. Sorry if this has already been asked. I don't think it has, actually. This is slightly different. In a conversation yesterday, someone mentioned that the new conduct guidelines which I assume is the DrupalCon code of conduct from what I'm reading, talked about explicit toxic behaviors being wrong. But as we know, many of the things that promote inequality are systemic and deal with systems of beliefs that reinforce people as inferior. I've met plenty of polite racists, transphobes, and sexists. Yeah, I've met a couple too. Will Drupal's evolving conduct guidelines also state that toxic beliefs are not welcome in our conduct, in our community?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is where, I'm going to defer the answer to this working group, right? I think it's a very complex topic and a complex answer, and I can't pretend to be the expert that knows the answer right here. So we're going to create this committee. We're going to invite people with different viewpoints to this committee too, because there's, people with different viewpoints on this topic, as well as experts, frankly, that have spent much or some of their professional career on these issues to figure out what the best path forward is for us. Because I think we can all agree that certain behaviors are completely off limits, right? But then it quickly becomes like this gray area where it gets a lot more difficult. And so it's about how do we manage like the difficult cases, where we need to find the right approach, frankly, because otherwise things could go bad. So,
cool.
Yeah.
So Nikki Stevens has made a very good observation of the questions that have been asked. And I'm going to turn it into a question. If that's okay, Nikki, are you here? Yeah, okay. I hope you're okay with this question. So Nikki noticed that she's glad to see a room full for this session, Ask Dries at DrupalCon, but disappointed that nearly all of the selected questions, believe me, you think were written by men. Really, I didn't notice. What can we do in future to ensure that doesn't happen? That's my bit of question at the end. What can we do to ensure that we get more questions and choose questions that are, how should we say, wider variety and diverse people?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm not picking the questions. I haven't even heard the questions before.
It's totally true. I never even noticed, and I'm glad that Nikki pointed it out.
I don't think you're purposely picking questions from mail, right? I know you well enough that is not the case. So, I don't know. Like we could add more. Well, we should invite more people to ask questions.
Absolutely.
And then we could, if we wanted to, we can have a better process for selecting the questions, so we have, more diversity in them. So.
Yeah, it would have been nice if we'd have had more people asking their questions earlier in the week. And I put that as a very subtle hint. They all came in today.
But, thanks for raising that. It's good. We should always try to do better on these things.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, and it's now it's been pointed out to me. I feel terrible about it, actually. And yeah, we need to change that.
This is where we iterate, get better,
Yeah. Oh, hello.
May I just briefly do a follow-up on that one?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the person that asked the question has any insights as to why that might be the case. Do we have just a minute or is she comfortable speaking about that?
If Nikki's happy to speak, I'm more than happy to hear.
The Drupal Diversity Group meets every Thursday in Slack, and I don't want to take time away from Dries' Q&A because I think it's really wonderful that we're spending a whole hour together doing it. So you're welcome to come to those meetings. Dries, you're always invited to come to those meetings, and we can figure out together how to change the representation of the voices in the room.
Thanks, Nikki. Actually, that is the last bit, because we've got a question to you, the whole audience. We're going to do it by hand. So, Ask Dries, we've changed it a little bit. And I think we can keep changing it for the future. So when we come back next year in, not saying, I've been so close to it this week, you wouldn't believe. I'm not used to having that knowledge. When we come back...
I'm not saying it either.
I'm going to make sure now that I don't say it. Now, when we come back, I want to keep iterating Ask Dries as well. So how we select questions in advance so that we can think about the diversity of the questions askers and that type of thing. I also would like to know what your feelings are as to, this is going to sound strange, but who should be on the stage for Ask Dries? Now, we've done it this year with just Dries, but maybe it should be a panel. One of the things that I was thinking of, maybe it should include Megan, so that you can get some DA knowledge. Maybe we could have one of the people from the Octo team. And maybe we could have a random member of the attendees. Yeah? We'll pick at random. Maybe something like that. Maybe a panel. And I just want to get an idea of whether that would be something that you would prefer. So if I say I would prefer, just stick your hand up. Oh, less than I thought. You'd rather just make Dries stay on the spot all by himself. You cruel people.
All right. I don't mind.
That's fine. It's not, I just wanted to find out if it was interesting.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely we can. Yeah. Oh, go on then. One more comment.
Well, I like the panel approach. This is my first time. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is my first time. My name's John. I work for the government. 30 days ago, they said, John, you're now managing content management on our Drupal site. Our contractors are leaving in about 18 months.
Where are they going?
So panic set in. First thing I did, I grabbed a 8, spent a couple nights trying to load it on my system at home, and then I come here and I met a lot of nice people. The master here, I haven't ran into him in the hallway at all, but the other question that was asked by the young lady back there is, at GSA, every time there's someone in any of our audience says, how can we get more and more ladies in government managed? Well, it starts with them. They've got to challenge the group as a whole to get that. I'm sitting in the hallway today out here on 3, and I'm counting the different people and the different entities that walk down the hall, and about 15 men go by, 2 women, 2 ladies. And I'm sitting there saying, what's wrong with this? Now, and I look at GSA currently, and it's so. But going back to your question, yeah. I like the panel, but I also think some of the new people that come in ought to be put on the panel and ask what they thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up. I mean, that ended okay. Yeah, I think having more voices, more diverse voices present on the panel would be great. I don't know that we should let Dries off the hook. I wanted to address the part you made about, that it be the underrepresented minority's job to kind of lift them up pull up by their bootstraps. I think it's all of our jobs to do.
Thank you, Tim.
And I think it's the people who, I don't think it's a little bit of both. I don't think it's a little bit of both. I think it's exactly the people in power and the people with the privilege and the position and the voice to do this work for everyone else. And I don't think it's fair to blame them for their predicament. You can't blame it on the pipeline, can't blame it on whatever. Like all those straw men, throw it out. Just, put in the time and the effort to help everyone else.
Thank you.
Hi. So one thing, I actually saw you in the hallway and I wanted to say hello and I totally chickened out and walked the other way. So my name's Taryn. I work for a local government in Texas. 2 things. The question that Nikki asked earlier, I actually did ask one of the questions anonymously. just because it was much more comfortable for me to do it that way. I do want to point out that coming here to DrupalCon, I feel like very comfortable. Like I feel safer here than I would at like most tech places. So I just want to thank y'all for that.
Thank you for saying that.
You know, there's still sometimes undercurrents where you want to ask a question that might be challenging to how some people feel about it. And I am like a 5'10" black woman with like purple hair, so it's not like nobody's gonna know that it was me that asked it. So that's there. But I don't know how many other women did ask questions anonymously and just didn't come up to the microphone. The reason why I got up was the part that the gentleman spoke earlier, asking about why women, basically saying that we needed to get up and, you know, do things, and the lean in thing, which kind of frustrates me. You didn't say lean in, but for me, knowing that where I am right now, I still do have challenges that go on, but a lot of the things that have helped me to get where I am, you know, I do have privileges. I grew up middle class. I have a college education, but it was the people that were around me and supporting me, and especially the men that pushed for me to be included, the people that are not people of color that pushed to have me included and invited me places and gave me opportunities. So, you know, I volunteer with Black Girls Code, and we can do all that we can to reinforce to the kids that you matter, you belong here, because I know growing up I was told by lots of people that black people and women did not do tech, but having other people that are not in your in-group support you, and not just like say, you know, we support you, but do things that include you, that is super meaningful, and it has a lot more weight when, you know, if you're a white dude, you see somebody in your peer group bringing this person in, that has a lot more than me knocking on the door and saying, please let me in. So, thank you.
That's a great comment.
Thank you. Thank you. And can I just say, it's a really amazing woman who set up halfway through this session that anonymous thing. So thank you, Sally. I think we need to call it a day there. I'm sorry. But thank you so much for this. And we will do it again next year.
Thank you.